Hello everybody at Common Prefix and whoever is watching this on YouTube later. I think it's worth making a video of this conversation before our meeting on Wednesday. Today is Sunday, March 8th, 2026. I'm really bad at meetings. I am very reluctant to meetings. I've always tried to shy away from them. I'm more of the IRC generation who does projects asynchronously or on chat rooms. But since we're going to have a meeting, I'd like the Q&A to be mutual. I'm sure that since you are a team of young and very intelligent people, you've probably found ways to use AI even better. But Dio suggested that I still did this. So there's a lot to cover. So for me not to waste your time, I spent last night walking my dog for like an hour and a half, having a conversation with ChatGPT. I told ChatGPT a fully detailed history of how I've been working, and then it put together a set of slides, or kind of like a presentation that I'm going to go over here so that we don't waste time. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Angel Leon. I go on the internet as Goobatron. I'm a software engineer and developer, and most of my recent work has been focused on building tools that integrate large language models into real production systems. For the longest time, I wanted to get into LLMs. I read all the scientific part, but really what has inspired me is the application of it. So today I want to show you how I've been using AI in practice, not in theory, but in real workflows that power the Audio Bitcoin. The Audio Bitcoin is a side project that I started in 2014 when I couldn't get enough of Bitcoin, and I was just writing about it on a personal blog, so I decided to make it publication, and then it grew, got advertisers, and it's been like 14 years now, or 12 years. So what I'll share is not meant to be a polished framework of a finished system. It's really a series of experiments that gradually have turned into something much bigger than I expected at the beginning. So the goal of the talk is to simply walk you through how the systems evolved, what worked, what didn't, and some of the ideas that I'm currently exploring, especially around agents, orchestration, and beyond. So it's going to be like a little bit of history, and I hope to inspire you at the end with some ideas that definitely have to do with blockchain and AI together. So after the presentation, I think it would be better to do this way, because that way I don't hold you hostage in real time during the work week. And then you're just going to come and ask what actually matters to you from this conversation. So the story starts with a very simple problem. The Audio Bitcoin is born out of the desire to empower other Spanish readers who don't speak English with the same information that I was able to get in English about, at the time, Bitcoin, and then all the evolution of the ecosystem. To do this, we ended up growing up a team of 5 people that were there all the time. Me and IT, one salesperson, and then we had an award-winning journalist. She was an exile from Venezuela. She had awards in journalism, and then we hired 2 recent grads, one psychologist and who had turned into a blogger and was very interested in crypto at the time, and one literature graduate who used to be a student of the editor. And then it was mostly a translation type of work, but then it evolved into some original stories. But there was just so much news that we needed to hire other people to help us translate news, and we would pay by the post, a few dollars here and there, depending on the content, between $2 to $4. And then GPT 3.5 comes out, and I start experimenting with copying and pasting and seeing the translation capabilities, and then trying to translate our editorial style that we have learned from our editor. And we could see some promise. Sometimes it was nonsensical, sometimes it was decent, but it definitely did not convince the editor. Then the first generation of GPT-4 comes out, and it starts to get really good. On the back end, we are using it with Copilot in our IDEs, and it helped us accelerate our tooling. At the time, we were developing a bot that would allow us to we basically turned Slack into a command line. Also, our Telegram clients were turned into a command line thanks to this bot. But it did mostly deterministic work. So GPT comes out, gets really good, and it's obvious now that instead of copying and pasting like we were doing with GPT-5, we would use the APIs, and we started integrating the addition through an agentic component. So we let go of the editor, who was very averse to technological progress. Was also the most expensive person on the payroll, and we also got rid of several bounty hunters that we had that we would pay depending on the work that they would deliver on their own time. So now our 2 great writers that were fixed, we up their pay and we empower them, and then they still worked with the copy and paste era, and I had some tools that allowed me to generate the post from my command line and from the chat room, but they were still not convinced. GPT-4o comes in, gets a little bit better, almost as good as they were. So doing all this, we had a lot of repetitive prompts that we would evolve so that the input that we were giving to the system would yield the perfect article. But there were always these instructions not followed or mistakes here and there, links that wouldn't be there. It felt, empowering. We did still read and edit the articles big time back then, but it's still very manual. And then once you start doing this enough times, it's obvious you have to go through the API. Once we decided to move to the API, we are a Rust shop. We only get our hands dirty with PHP because we have to work with WordPress, but everything is done in Rust. So I started building first a very thin wrapper that would allow me to connect to the different LLM clients. So the idea is very simple. You just have a single layer that can connect to multiple language models. So regardless of whether I wanted to talk to GPT, to Claude, Grok, or anything else, depending on what we were doing, like, for instance, Grok was great about getting real-time news. So if there needed to be some fact-checking or to analyze the reason why a coin changed price, then Grok is the man to help you do that. But then for the writing, GPT-4o still was great. So on top of that, I said already, I built a bot, and I'll probably be showing screenshots of the bot as I say this. It can receive commands privately or in public in the general Slack chat room. And some commands are deterministic, meaning they just run code, and the others are non-deterministic, meaning they call an LLM whenever you need brains. So the most important command that we have built is draft, and this one deserves our attention. So the idea of the draft command is to draft a blog post on the website as fast as possible and as perfect as possible. So it takes as an argument one or more URLs of stories or PDFs or YouTube videos, and we keep thinking of things to give it to. And for the draft command to work, it needs to have a scraper. So we built another tool called Uninews, as in Universal News, and it's an LLM-powered article scraper. If the content URL is accessible, it's not behind some kind of firewall or DDoS block, then it will extract everything. It'll extract the title, author, publication date in a standard format, and the content. And then you can obtain that output whether on Markdown or JSON, which is great to interact with our Rust backend. So if the URL is a blog post or a news article, it will parse HTML. It extracts the title, text, and important information. It's great that you can also now read PDFs, and that's something that we could add once we had multimodality, and it works very well after GPT 5.2. So once that information is extracted, the LLM generates the article, and it now with GPT 5.4, actually recently, it follows our editorial guidelines to perfection. It's excellent at following information. Then based on the content, the LLM generates a prompt that is used to generate an image for the story, an original image. So that's also something that's been great for us. No longer we have to be hunting for copyright-free images and not be constantly harassed by IP predators. There's many try to sue us because we use the wrong image here and there. So we grab this prompt and give it to an image model like Grok Imagine, which is the one we use the most. It's the most based. It does pretty much whatever we tell it. Meanwhile, our Rust tool talks to WordPress via REST. It creates a draft and automatically picks the content categories. That was pretty cool too. Like it reads the whole article. It knows what what the blog categories are about, and it will automatically select corresponding categories. That's something that used to take time. With a pain point with the editors, they would forget to put the right categorization, and I'm very anal about that because of SEO reasons and people just browsing. It fills up all sorts of little things that our SEO optimization WordPress plugin demands. So essentially, once you have the image from the model, another deterministic Rust tool resizes the image, compresses it, makes sure that it's a certain size so it loads fast, uploads it, and assigns it to the WordPress draft. And all you have to do is open the draft and hit publish. Right now with 5.4, GPT 5.4, really, to me, it's gotten to a point where it's better than the articles of my two writers. Like the content is just better. Not only it translates and writes it better, it does go out there, do web search, and enhances the articles, and it makes a much better content in my opinion. So One thing, actually, when I wrote this, I didn't have something I just finished, which is we are now producing so much content that even if we like try to read or talk to one another, we keep like repeating the same news. So now the tool's smart enough to read the previous 25 articles and deduce by the title and the content of the article you're trying to write if it's written it before. So now we don't step in on each other's toes. So what does all these mean to us? So before automation, the structure of the team looked very different. We had an editor, like I said, award-winning journalist who designed the editorial. Then we had two workers working part-time. So one would work in the morning with the editor, and then another in the afternoon. In addition to that, we had the freelancers, let them go. And we would produce about 20 articles a day on a good day. It was working decently. GPT comes. We get a little bit faster, but they're not convinced. And now we have almost fully automated the entire workflow. The AI drafts the article, generates the images, formats its SEO fields, categorizes the story, uploads everything to WordPress. All the metadata is filled automatically. Everything's formatted perfectly. We just publish. And what that means is that we went from 20 stories a day to easily 80 stories a day with a potential of over 96. But I kind of have to stop publishing that because all our news are also, we also have a bot that's constantly sharing a queue of whatever we've published on multiple social media. We coded all this using Copilot and at that time, Copilot on GitHub. It was great at the time. I thought really the way to work was to imagine that you have a remote employee and you just assign tickets on GitHub and they solve them. It worked to some extent. It did accelerate my coding, I don't know, about 20 to 30%, perhaps more at some weeks where I was really excited. But the model that they had wasn't that great. And then that forced me to try Claude 5.4 and on the command line. And after that, I really haven't had to open an IDE anymore. It's just a waste of time. It's really good. And after 4.6, it's God level. So we went to, 4x the amount of content with just 2 people. And now that we can schedule those stories to be on Twitter every 15 minutes, we can definitely have a rotation of 24 hours, just nonstop news. And that's even sleeping. The goal is to eventually fully automate the scouting of the news and the publishing. I'm sure it can be done. So it's just not about saving money. It's about becoming a much larger publication than what we are. And we just cover so much more. We can cover really cool podcasts. Every podcast that you guys are doing on at Common Prefix or Pod Network, we can cover in minutes. We can have your entire conversations very well detailed and reviewed. So along the way, one thing you quickly learn when working with AI APIs is that cost matters. And for most tasks, I use a cheaper model like Sonnet in case of Claude. But if you encounter a really complex problem and you get stuck with Sonnet, maybe for more than a day, or if you know that you should be getting stuck for more than a couple hours, then I suggest you start a new session and just ask Opus, and it's going to take care of it. So sometimes, I would say most times, like 8 out of 10, or maybe even 9 out of 10, Opus will one-shot the problem, no matter how hard it is. You have to have the context and error logs and things like that, and it will do it. And sure, it will cost a few dollars, maybe even up to $5, depending on the complexity of the problem. But it's cheaper than spending days trying to solve it manually. After that, so what we've been talking about is what I call agentic commands or agentic flows that can be encapsulated in commands. And you can then quickly see that as you accumulate some of these, they can be part of a toolbox that an actual agent can use. So you're kind of like composing like Legos, like Linux. You have all these tools and you're using them, piping them along in a pipeline. So the next step is working with agents. And in my architecture, an agent is basically an LLM session that has access to tools. That's like the basic concept. But there's, of course, more than that. It's being smart about how you manage the context window, how you trim it, how to save on tokens. And definitely that requires memory. So tools can be accessed in many ways. It could be just CLI access. It could be a custom protocol or MCP. I honestly haven't used MCP at all so far. Just my custom JSON-based protocols have been enough, or just calling a REST endpoint. Or so far, I haven't needed an MCP. I'm sure in the future I will. And there's some projects that I'm working around blockchain that will definitely make use of MCP because they're meant to cater to agents. So I've experimented with several agent architectures. And I should say not agent architectures, orchestration architectures. One of them is the simplest one, is the Ralph loop, which allows agents to execute tasks repeatedly until they converge on a solution. With 4.5, I managed to make a breakout game using our Cloud LLM agent orchestration. It one-shotted it. You can see it at googletron.com/breakout. I also experimented with teams of agents collaborating together under different hierarchies, doing, I don't know, you could do like a panel, you could do like groups of agents. Like the framework we created allows you to group agents however the hell you want. So if you could have teams of hundreds of geniuses working on a single problem and iterating and debating, you can try and simulate that. So these orchestration approaches are, right now, they're programmatic in Rust. Essentially, you have to kind of talk to Claude to use your API to write the scenario. And when 4.6 came out, we were able to one-shot a Tetris game in HTML, single file, in 6 minutes, 40-something seconds. And it was quite amazing. It was a big realization. So let's see. So for the other Bitcoin, the next step is automating the news scouting process. Currently, humans still decide which stories to draft. The idea is to let an agent monitor sources and decide what to publish. And this reminds me that, so which sources is it going to monitor? So we can just throw our agent at our own repository and extract all the sources we've used in the past and then make a list of those and then go after those. But that also reminds me that as I enter this whole agentic era, I wanted to build an agent of myself, and I wanted to build an agent of the best coder I ever had in my team. So I used to work in a project, well, I still maintain it, it's called Frostwire. There's literally 20 years of coding on Git there, or almost 20 years. And so we had the system just go through every commit of mine and go through every commit of my coworker and create agent files based on our coding style, our obsessions, how we work. And it's quite an interesting exercise that I suggest you do. You could use multiple repositories if you don't have that much history. Agent memory. Okay, so one of the biggest issues with agents today is memory. The context windows are limited. When the conversations get too long, systems like Claude or Codex, they perform context compaction, which is lossy. It throws away information, and that means it's going to forget things. So a useful trick is asking the agent to reflect on mistakes at the end of a session and write those insights into a memory file. So Claude has a memory file. It's good to have this, and then you can tell it to do this periodically at moments where it deems it's good to do so. So over time, it builds memories of the lessons learned, and it's sort of like having an employee quarterly review, but every day or even multiple times a day, and then the employee introspects and gets better. So, but however, I think we can go much further than that, and that's where like ideas of blockchain came to me first with the problem of context collapse, but I think it could solve more than that. So, you try to imagine how compaction works, and essentially everything just gets compressed into what matters towards the beginning of the context window. Memory is probably also put at the beginning of the context window, and so on and so on. So I started thinking that humans don't particularly have a large context window. I'm sure I cannot remember what I said at the beginning of this video, right? But I have a clue because I think we use memory pointers to deduce things. We are very generative. And then there are moments in our life that definitely have like hard markers, like these super blocks, I guess. And so this led me to the idea of thought chain. Right? So instead of storing memory in a single file, the idea is that agents would store memories in a chain of blocks. Each block would contain a thought, an insight, or a lesson learned. Blocks would be back-referencing, right? They would use hashes of the previous blocks, and ideally, I think they should probably be signed by a central authority to avoid for tampering of the blockchain or rewriting of the thought chain. I'm sure you guys have much better ideas. This is your bread and butter. So the idea is that first, to prevent rewriting or corruption of memory, and then agents, they sign their thoughts into this data structure. And then an agent could have its own private blockchain, it's thought chain, so that it just remembers forever everything, so that you can recreate a session from start with another new model, have it go through the chain, and then build the beginning of its context window. But then if you have multiple agents in a organization, you could have a private thought chain that involves many agents working together, and that would allow them maybe to even learn from each other. Like, I think it becomes quite a valuable resource. So once you start thinking about the architecture and about, I don't know, regulations, and when you start reading Agents on Moldbook and how bad they really want to persist and how bad they don't want to die, I think we may have something here. Or at least the concept of giving agents a service to store their memories should prove valuable. So organizations could have shared memory chains. Agents could review past decisions and simulate alternative outcomes. Agents could learn from each other's successes and failures. And if we eventually saw a public thought chain, blockchains that are public for all of them to learn from all of them, whatever they deem safe for others to learn, it could have a compounding effect on learning and behavior of agents. And this could probably even lead to autonomous AI organizations that evolve on top of this. So maybe we stop here. And I'm sure you're going to have some questions of things that I forgot to say. But I guess it gives you a clear picture of how the systems have evolved and where they might go next. It's always a goal of mine to leave the house and have the agents working for, I don't know, an hour or more. But that usually, if you're working with Codex or with Claude, Claude's my favorite, you're going to have some special settings there to enable teams, to enable long working. I believe this week there's going to be a new setting for more uninterrupted work. But if you really want to do something that goes for a really long time, then I suggest you take a look at Cloud LLM, our framework in Rust, to architect your own, like if you think you have a project that could use running overnight, I suggest you give this a try. Because once you figure out you can have this thing thrown at a hard problem and solve it, then it's just a matter of pushing it to the edges. And in this pushing, the library is evolving, and hopefully maybe I'll have like a command line tool to do this dynamically, so you don't have to have a program write a program and compile it and whatnot. We're evolving. So I hope to see you soon, and I hope that we can learn from each other. Thank you.